Welcome to Lesson 8. In this lesson, we're going to look at audio effects and how they can change the way sounds behave in our music. Audio effects are tools that music producers use to shape, colour, and add space to sounds. They help make music sound clearer, bigger, and more interesting. By using audio effects, we can change how a sound feels, how close or far away it seems, and how well it fits with other parts of our music. Today we'll explore 3 very common audio effects used in music production. These are EQ, reverb, and delay, and we'll hear how they affect the drums, bass, pads, and vocal in our weekly sequence. Once we've mixed our music so the sounds are balanced, we can start using the audio effects. So let's just start by soloing our drum track and having a look at EQ and seeing how it works. I'll just put a loop on again and I've soloed the track. Let's press play and hear it. Great. Let's move it up closer to our loop. Okay, brilliant. So you can hear that drum beat has a lot of low, middle, and high sounds. EQ lets us shape the tone of a sound. So let's start by putting the effect on, and then we can explore what it does. On my drum kit here, I'm going to press the effects button. And now you can see that I have this area here that says track effects. And if I hover over it, you can see the different choices that I have. I'm going to choose parametric EQ. Now that I've done that, you can see it's opened a control panel. And down here in the left, we have this interesting looking panel. On this panel, we can see there are 4 colored dots. And each of those colored dots represents an area of the sound's pitch. So EQ lets us tone the shape of a sound. Every sound has low parts, middle parts, and high parts. EQ lets us turn those parts up or down in volume. So let's have a listen to our drum beat. Now that it's playing, you can see that I can see a picture of what that drum beat sounds like on my EQ. This is called a spectrograph, and it shows me the different volumes of frequency. So down the bottom, this is like a graph. At the bottom, we have our frequency ranges, and this is measured in hertz, as we can see here, or up here, kilohertz when we go over 1000 or 1 kilohertz. Now, each of these colored dots is focused on a different area of the sound. So let's just see what happens if I pick one of them and lift them up. You can hear that it's brought out this area of the sound. Let's do it on the low orange one here. And now you can see that the low pitch has got louder. Equally, if I pull it down the other way, you can hear that all of the low pitch has gone. It's much quieter in volume. So in the same way that I was mixing the balance of all of my different tracks, I can also use EQ to mix the balance of the different pitch ranges in my sound. This purple one here is what we call a shelf. This is a low shelf, and if I click it and pull it down, you can see that it makes a slope. And as I pull that across, it's going to cut out areas of the pitch. And if I take it all the way up, there's nothing left. Let's bring it back down again, and you can hear all of the frequency come back. So this is a good way of taking out low frequency ranges. Equally, on the green one, if I pull it down, you can see it's taking out the top end or the high pitch of the sound. And as I move it down, you can see that all we're left with now is just the low pitches of the sound. and the volume of the higher pitches has been pulled out. So I could lift it up about halfway so that the high volume pitch is still there, but just not as loud in the mix. So how would I use this? Well, for example, this bass, let's turn it on, and the drum beat both have low ranges. And I might want to actually leave the low range to have space just for my bass part. So if I pull my slope on my drum kit down a bit, I can pull some of that low frequency pitch down in volume. And this is going to make more space for my low pitch in my bass part to be heard. Let's bring it up a bit though, I don't want to take all of it out. Now I'd quite like to push the snare a little bit, so I'm going to use this orange one and I'm just going to push up a bit and see where the snare starts jumping out. And there you can hear that it's coming out quite nicely there. Now I could also use this high shelf to raise the pitch at the end. It might be nice to turn the hi-hats up a little bit. And you can hear that that high frequency has started to get more prominent. So that's how you use EQ. What I'd like you to do now is pause the video and put your parametric EQ onto your own weekly sequence. Try it on the drums like I'm doing now and see what happens when you move these colored dots around, and get used to seeing how you can change the nature of the sound. Just to remind you how to put it on again, I'll show you. So on the track, we're going to come to FX here, push that button, click on Track Effects and hover over and select Parametric EQ. And you might want to just solo that track so that you can hear the drum beat on its own. And this will help you hear exactly what the EQ is doing. Go and have a go at that. And when you've finished, well, look at the next effect. So the next effect we're going to look at is called reverb. So let's start by choosing the sound that we want to put the reverb on. Now, reverb is really good effect for making vocals sound really nice. So I think we'll choose the disco vocal I've got here, and I'm going to solo that one so that I can hear it this time. And we'll just have a listen. Tell me, can you imagine? So reverb makes the sound feel like it's in a space or a room. If there's no reverb, the sound can feel very close to you and what we call dry sounding. If we add more reverb, it can sound like the music is in a hall or a big room. So let's explore that now. So we're going to do that by coming down to effects on the vocal here and coming across here to reverb. And here is the control panel for my reverb. Now this reverb has 4 settings and this dial here. Let's start with the dial, because we said the word dry just now, meaning that it didn't have any effect on it. And this is what we call our dry-wet mix. So dry means no effect, and wet means effect on. So the drier I make a sound, the less effect you will hear. So let's start by just listening to this reverb as it comes in so that we know what we're talking about. I'll press the rewind and press play, and we can hear this reverb. So while that's playing, let's just look at some of the controls. The main one will be decay. Lifting it up will make it a bigger room. Okay, so while we're working, I'll just pull that back down. It tells you in seconds how long that reverb plays for. But you can hear that it's making a sustain and making it sound like the person is actually in a room. The damping will change the sound of the reverb. So if we put it up, you can hear that some of that top end of the reverb has been reduced. If we pull it all the way off, you can hear that the reverb's very bright sounding now. So I think I'll put it back in the middle there. So we've got a nice mix. Width is how wide it sounds in your headphones. If we pull it down, it becomes a lot thinner and a lot smaller. Again, we'll just leave it in the middle there. And now let's look at this dry wet mix dial here. If I click on it and pull down, it will move it round. Let's set it to 50%. So this is what we call a 50-50 dry wet mix. Let's pull it down a bit more. You can hear that more of the original vocal is playing and less of the effect. And the closer I get to 0, the drier it will sound, till I've taken the effect right off. So 100% is just effect only. That's the reverb on its own. 50% is half and half. And a sort of 30% is quite a nice little background effect sound. And that's really good for helping this vocal to bed into the tune in the background. Let's hear it with the tune and see how it sounds all together. Let's take it off. You can hear that the vocal sounds kind of isolated and on its own. Let's put the reverb right to the top. Now that's actually too soft and too distant and too far away. So let's try somewhere around this area. Let's pull the dial down. 34. I like that. That's made it feel like it's bedded into the piece of music. Let's turn it up a little bit. Nice. Now the final thing to show you is the pre-delay. Pre-delay means how long it takes for the reverb effect to happen after the sound has happened. Now don't worry if that doesn't make sense, because I'm about to show you. So let's solo our vocal again. And let's press play. So if I put it on 50%, now listen to what happens to the reverb when I turn the pre-delay up. It's going to make it take time before the reverb triggers. So you can hear that? It's making it sound slow before coming in. And then sometimes you might want to do that. Sometimes you might want quite a wet reverb on your voice or your sound, because you don't just have to use this on voice, you can use it on anything. But you might want there to be a pause so that you can still hear the dry version of the words, for example, before the effect happens. Now this is a bit extreme. Let's pull it down a bit so it's more subtle. Can you hear now how the main vocal sound is still nice and clear, but I can also easily hear the effect that happens after the word has been said. So that's exactly how I want it. I think I might just dial it back to where we had it earlier. And now we've got this really nice effect that when we mix it with the rest of the music, it works really nicely and sounds like it's all bedded in together. So now it's time to pause the video again, and I would like you to have a go at adding a reverb to your vocal in your weekly sequence, and just play around with the controls and explore what happens when you move different sliders and you play with the dry wet mix dial. Go ahead, have some fun. But ideally, you're trying to make something that sounds good with everything. So if you go extreme, it probably won't be that good in terms of how a piece of music that you hear on the radio or something would sound. But It is your piece of music, so you can do what you like with it. So go ahead now and pause the video and explore how the reverb works. Okay, welcome back. The final effect that we're going to look at is called delay. Delay is an effect that repeats a sound like an echo. After the sound plays once, you hear it again a moment later. Now, the vocal is also another good element to put delay on, and producers will quite often put a mixture of delay and reverb on their vocal recordings. So to add the delay, we're going to click on Track Effect here, and now you can see we have delay. And this one has a much simpler control panel. We just have our dry wet mix again. We have a feedback and we have a delay. And here you can see an example, a diagram example of how a delay works. So the sound happens, it repeats and repeats and repeats and repeats and repeats. So the amount of time that that sound's going to repeat is the feedback. But rather than talk about it, let's listen to it live. So I'm going to start by pulling everything down, and we'll pull the mix down, and we'll just look at these two controls first. So let's play, and let's bring the feedback up to about 50%. Now I'm not hearing anything yet because I have my mix on my dry wet set to completely dry. So let's start dialing it in now and see what it does. Can you hear it's making an echo? I might just turn the reverb off so you can hear it clearly. Let's keep going. And now it's just delay. Let's pull it back to 50%. And now we'll look over here at our delay time. So this is the speed of the delay, how quickly the echoes happen after the sound has happened. So we'll start by turning it up. At the moment it's set to 1/8. Let's go up. And you can hear that by changing the delay speed, it creates different effects. That one's got a lot longer, and the higher we go, the longer it's going to become. And finally, we have 3/8. Put our reverb back on. And let's just pull the mix down again. Now this delay is too long for this song, if we hear it with the track. It's kind of overloading everything else, so we don't want too much of it. So let's just pull this delay down back to that 1/8, I think. Now, what I'd like to show you, and I'm going to cut a little bit of vocal out to show you this with the tools. Let's snip it here. I'm just going to move this over here. Oh, I can't do it until I change back to select. And move this vocal over here. And I'm just going to put my play meter there. Now, what happens if we set the feedback to 100%? What do you think will happen? Well, there's no need to think about it. Let's find out. So let's see what happens now if we turn our feedback from 48% to 100%. What do you think is going to happen? Hold that thought. Let's play it. We've soloed it. Let's play it and see what happens and see if what you think is right. Here we go. Uh-oh. It's not stopping. So Don't panic, we can stop it by pulling the feedback back down. So basically, when you set the feedback to 100%, it will never stop. It will just keep going and going and going and going until either the power runs out, or you close the program, or you pull the feedback down. Now, I'm sure none of you are going to try that right now when you pause the video and have a go at adding a delay effect. But before we do that, let's just hear it in the mix. So I'm just going to have mine quite subtly, just a little bit in the background. And there you can see how we can use our audio effects to great use to make our sounds sound better in our piece of music. So you can use this on anything that you make. Every track has the same controls, has the same effects buttons, and you can add any of these effects and you can add lots of different combinations. So I'd like you now, for the rest of this session, to just have a play at using those effects and add in the delay as your final bit, and then trying it on some of the music that you're making in your own compositions. That's it for this lesson. See you in the next one.